Hello, Kim, and thank you for being on the show today. You are the head teacher and founder of Pemako Buddhism. And to start, could you tell us about your background in Buddhism and your journey in meditation? And can you tell us also about your teachers and influences and what led you to become a Dharma teacher?
Thank you for the welcome, Ludovic. Bonjour, bonjour. Glad to do this. Well, my background, it's quite a long story. You know, I'm 42 years old now, and like my path or in Dharma or in spirituality started when I was a little boy of 3 years old. And it started with a couple of very strong experiences that, you know, really from very early on kind of set my compass in life and made me a spiritual seeker. Let's put it that way. And those events early on was that when I was a small boy, with my own eyes, I saw my dog die. You know, it was a winter evening in eastern Finland where my family lived, and there was a moment when the dog asked to go out, and I sensed that there was something different in the atmosphere, my father, he let the dog out. And I saw it walk outside. I was watching, I was opening the curtain a little bit and saw how the dog walked to the yard. And it was like dark Finnish winter evening. And there was snow falling slowly, like big snow falling slowly. And the dog just keeled on its side. It just dropped on its side, so and stopped moving, stopped breathing, and I asked my parents that, you know, what happened to the dog's name was Jesse, you would say in English, Jesse, and they couldn't really answer me, and they were kind of avoiding the whole question and were kind of bothered about it, but. You know, witnessing death, the next morning we buried it with my father, the dog. And it was just one of those moments, like with many people who become interested in spirituality and yoga and meditation, you know, meeting death early on in life. There are many, many examples of this. So that was one. And also another kind of a general or overall experience was that there was a lot of pain and suffering in my own family and in my relatives, you know, because of war trauma. Finland fought a war with Russia in the Second World War, and the consequence of this. One consequence of this was that a whole generation of young men and also some women got very traumatized because of being in war and experiencing all the horrible things that people experience in war. And, you know, my grandpa was in the war. So, you know, it meant that, you know, his children and my relatives, they all got a share of that war trauma. And what is really common even nowadays 2-3 generations after the war, in Finland is a lot of alcoholism. So people try to self-medicate themselves with alcohol, and this was also the case in my family and relatives. My father was an alcoholic because he was so traumatized, and I saw that, as a small boy, 2-3 years old, I saw that, and this also affected my so much suffering, so much pain, some aggression, some fighting. I saw that it just kind of set my path, because I saw that people weren't happy and enjoying themselves. And also when I was a small boy, my family aren't religious. I was baptized into a Russian Orthodox church, like formally, but nobody in the family was like a practicing Christian, except my grandmother. But she didn't have much influence on, she didn't like force practices or anything on us. But nevertheless, even without any religious influence on me, I started having, when I was witnessing that suffering in my immediate family and relatives and the whole small community, the town where I grew up, I spontaneously started to go to my bedroom, my sisters and my bedroom, when I was a small kid, and I sat to the side of the bed and started spontaneously praying. Nobody taught me this. And I remember when I was sitting there and feeling the pain and suffering and confusion, this immense confusion in my own body, I just started to pray. I started to pray for the well-being and happiness, and wishing love for my family members, from the people of my town, my relatives, and made it bigger and bigger and bigger, the prayer, to include everybody in the end. And I would do this, when I did that, the whole room became lit, as if, a different, well, there was a profound release and profound peace, profound clarity that came. And this happened 2-3 times a week for years and years. I did this, throughout my early childhood, and then maybe until when I was 9-10 years old. So, and much later on, I learned that what happened, when I had already learned Tantra, I learned that what happened when, there was this immense peace and clarity that would come. Then it was only, like 25, over 20 years later when I found out what happened there. And what happened was that there were many spiritual masters, so-called Mahasiddhas, greatly attained masters, who came to visit me every time I did that. And well, it's a long list of masters. I now know who they were, and one of those was Jesus Christ. One of those was Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, who was an Indian master who brought tantric teachings to Tibet, and many others, both male and female masters of the past, who came to offer their help, offer their, to support me and to hold me, so that I wouldn't get as traumatized as others were getting, and as stressed. So this started happening when I was 2-3 years old, and then when I was 7 years old, I started judo practice, martial arts. And I was really fortunate because, back in 1986, there was like only a handful of people in the whole country of Finland who had learned about meditation, and there were no meditation groups or Buddhist groups or anything like that, apart from like church ceremonies and rituals. so I was very fortunate that my first judo teacher, he had learned some meditation, he had learned acupuncture and shiatsu. I later became a shiatsu therapist myself. So I was very fortunate to have a judo teacher who taught me the basics of silent sitting meditation. So when I started judo at 7, and I did it for like 6-7 years every day, we would meditate in the beginning and in the end of session, and he would give little instructions, you know, what to do and what not to do. So I did that, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and also the martial arts very much. And then when I became a teenager, I moved to a high school, like a music high school in the capital area, and then started, capital area in the 90s. There were some meditation groups, Buddhist groups here and there. So I started going to those, and from there, it little by little, it kind of started developing into a how should I say, life path, way of life. And then at the age of 23, I did also a lot of drinking in my teenage years, and a lot of problems come with excess drinking. So I definitely did that, overdid it. So by the time when I was 23, I was really, and I also studied music. So by education, I'm a music producer and a musician. I played the guitar. So I didn't find the answers from music. I didn't find the burning questions of my life from partying. And then when I was 23, I saw an advertisement in the magazine about introduction to Zen Buddhist meditation. So I was like, oh, I gotta do this. And I remember the moment when I grabbed the handle of the Zen Center in Helsinki. This was in January 2003. I literally felt like a surge of energy going through my body that came with the intuition that now I found it. And from that first day on, I started sitting 8 hours or more every day, meditation. And I continued that 8.5 years non-stop until late 2011. So I did Zen meditation for 4.5 years, and then I was in a temple in Japan. I was really fortunate to I would say meet and train with Japanese Zen masters who were really high level in the Zen world. So I stayed in a temple in with Shodo Harada. Roshi is his name. But I also had, what was more meaningful relationship to me was to meet a Zen master who was also a Zen artist, calligrapher, and martial artist, Terayama Sensei, Terayama Tamchu. And he was really a heart teacher for me. He, from the first moment when we met, it's like trying to tell the whole story in a very short time. It leaves so many things unmentioned and kind of just gives a rough sketch of it. But Terayama Sensei, he was a mentor. He was a teacher to me, but he was also like a big brother or a father to me. So from the first moment when we met, he took me under his wing and kept me there until he passed away. And later on, he had a lot of Japanese students. He was like a superstar in a Japanese Zen world. So he was really well known. Not much outside Japan, because not many people outside Japan are interested in Zen art and Zen calligraphy. There's a little bit of interest, but but he was really well known in Japan, and it was only later on when I was told and when I learned that he didn't really take students, not even his senior students, close to him as he did to me. Not to even mention newcomer students. So I really had a special relationship with him for 3 years until he passed away. I still miss him a lot. But then, so I did 4.5 years in Zen Buddhism, and then I started feeling that it wasn't really a fit for me. You know, I had done a lot of meditation, 8 hours or more every day, and you know, I just had to admit the fact that I hadn't even had one awakening experience. So I was like you know, all that effort, day and night, you know, practicing, day and night following the instructions that I had received, and it didn't work. And this is actually, by the way, you know, Terayama Sensei, he had gone through the whole training syllabus of Rinzai Zen Buddhism, but he didn't teach it because he felt that it wasn't effective enough. So he didn't teach koans. He had other methods. But so anyway, after my Zen, you know, I started practicing Tantra, first Hindu Tantra, and this was 2006, late 2006. And then in 2007, I was able to connect with an American tantric teacher called Siva Kami. And she was the other very significant teacher on my path who, you know, she was, you would say, a mystic. Maybe I will go back a little bit and explain that a part of Zen calligraphy that I had studied for very closely with Terayama Sensei and in detail, part of it is to read and sense energies from, you know, for example, when some ancient Zen master or Buddhist master or Taoist master has made a calligraphy or a painting, the energy and realization, insight, energy of awakening of that person is transmitted into the ink, and it remains there for as long as the art piece exists. So this is what separates Zen calligraphy and Zen art from ordinary art or ordinary calligraphy, because it emphasizes this reading of energy from the art piece. So, you know, I had studied this with Terayama Sensei, who was the top teacher of that field. So I had a lot of experience of reading energies by then, also through shiatsu and Reiki healing. So by the time when I connected with Siva Kami, my American tantric teacher, you know, I immediately picked on of her energy, of her realization and her lineage. And her lineage was that back in the mid-70s, when she started practicing, she connected with a lineage of Hindu Tantra. She was first a student of Yogananda's, Paramahamsa Yogananda student. So Yogananda student was the first one who initiated her, gave her an empowerment, and like literally 2 days after she got the empowerment, you know, a whole different world opened up to her, because she had been like a like a housewife until that point, just taking care of the house and raising children, which is a hard task. But you know, she was kind of living like a you know, normal American housewife in the early 70s, a pretty traditional way of life, but still had a spiritual yearning. So she went and got the thing from Yogananda student, and then 2 days later she just started having these mystical visions and meetings of these spiritual masters, just like I had had from my childhood. And Sivakami was alive maybe 3.5 years after our first contact. You know, by the time when we connected, she was already a grandmother and retired from professional career. And so she had had all these, in quotations, mystical experiences with non-physical masters of Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, Christianity, all these masters coming to meet her. And she had received teachings. She had a lot of experience of that kind of communication. And when I told her early on that, you know, I have also had those experiences since I was a kid, she really trained me in the best of her ability to understand that connection better and to embrace that connection and make use of it to be able to help others. So I connected with her in 2007, and then it was actually a couple of months before I connected with her when I started having again these visitations of different masters. And they started teaching me, they started giving me instructions, and then when this had been going on for I don't know, a couple of years, 1 or 2 years, because I already had pretty solid background through Zen meditation and, you know, thousands and thousands of hours of practice, that then my non-physical masters asked me to teach, asked me to share what I had learned from them, but also my friends, people who knew me, asked me to teach. And that's how I started to teach back in 2008. And it's been 13 years since I've taught full time and still doing it. So yeah, I guess that's enough for your first question.
It's very fascinating because it's a very wide range of traditions, and there seems to be no separation between the different traditions. You talked about non-physical masters from different lineages, and could you tell us if it was very one at the time, or it was at different time that you encountered these masters?
Well, yeah, one thing that never made sense to me personally is fundamentalism or dogmatism. I still don't understand it, but I understand why people become fundamentalists and dogmatists. But and it's probably because you know, there was a time in Zen Buddhism where I was really fixed with Zen Buddhist practice. But, you know, like I said, at some point I just had to admit that this doesn't work for me. It's not working for me, you know. I was as miserable, just calmer, but as miserable. I still had the same problems of existence like I had before. So it just didn't work for me. And then I just had to kind of drop or loosen my grip of being attached to Zen Buddhism and kind of start fresh. So, to me, maybe because of those transmissions since I was a child, maybe that's why I never felt a conflict between Jesus Christ and Padmasambhava and Lao Tzu from Taoism, or Krishna and Babaji. Maybe that's why. But at the same time, it is also, all beings have this wonderful, loving, fresh, pure nature called Buddha nature in Buddhism, or Christ-likeness, Christ nature in Christianity. And it doesn't, that being the case, it doesn't make sense to me that only Buddhists would have the answer, or only Christians or only Hindus would have the answer. That to me is, I can't accept it. But I've also been very, very fortunate and blessed to have personal guidance from many great spiritual masters, Mahasiddhas, non-physically, through thousands of hours of Guru Yoga and getting blessings from them, like really strong blessings, like being flushed throughout. So I've been blessed to have those experiences with them, because it has given me like a unerring, unmistakable confidence that it is possible, or that if you look at it, religions from a doctrinal point of view, you easily, and people easily get caught up with differences of opinion, differences in opinion, differences in doctrine. But if you look at it from the point of view of the founders or masters, no difference whatsoever. So, yeah.
Okay. And can you tell us what is Pemako Buddhism, and if it is Vajrayana Buddhism, and in what ways can it be considered as pragmatic Dharma?
Okay. So Pemako is a school of Dharma, or a method of Dharma, method of yoga. Maybe I should say method of yoga rather than Buddhism, because the term Buddhism is associated with so many different ways. So maybe we should talk about a method of yoga, method of internal yoga instead. So Pemako Buddhism or Pemako Yoga is a training system that I have founded based on first and foremost those transmissions that I have received from non-physical masters, first Padmasambhava and then others. So that is one, and it is like a practice-oriented method to help people discover and realize the basic nature that is completely fresh, like wild mint, so fresh, so clear, loving, utterly kind, completely positive. So it is simply a method to discover this, and pragmatic, yes, definitely not dogmatic. So we have dogma, and the opposite of that is pragma. So what has been very important to me, after many years with traditional methods of Buddhism, established forms of Buddhism, because they didn't deliver, they didn't work for me. And I know that they also don't work for many others. So as a teacher, as the founder of Pemako, from the beginning I I kind of took a different style of doing this. So basically creating a ideal learning environment where the, just like we can see in secular education, things are well taught. So pedagogics is there, skillful ways and means to pass the teaching to the students. That is very, very important, what I emphasize. And what is also very important is that, the mind that we are working with in meditation practice, yogic practice, the mind is abstract. We cannot touch the mind like we can touch the physical body. So this is why students, practitioners need to have a very clear and simple understanding what the practice is about and what it isn't about. And the instructions need to be very simple, and there needs to be a clear overview of the whole process, of the whole path, from the beginning, from the unawakened state to the early medium, then like a advanced medium stages to full enlightenment. This needs to be all laid out. And, if we look at the history of Buddhism, maybe even history of Hindu yogas, there has been many path maps that have been created. But it is always the case that over time, teachings get diluted, watered down. So, and the meanings of path maps, meaning of what the practice is, which in Dharma is to remove ignorance or transform ignorance into wisdom with the help of compassion. This gets foggy over time. So what I've done in my work is to kind of simplify and clarify things and offer as simple as possible techniques and practices that actually make that happen, make the discovery of our basic nature happen. Maybe something that I could say about tantric practice or Vajrayana is that, tantric yoga in Buddhism, it's just like a tantric interpretation of Mahayana, the great vehicle Buddhism. So there is like the non-tantric Mahayana and there is tantric Mahayana called Vajrayana. But what is necessary for Vajrayana practitioners is to understand this non-tantric Mahayana, also called Sutrayana, and also the classical vehicle of Buddhism, the small vehicle Buddhism, Hinayana, so that Vajrayana can be properly understood and practiced. So, did I cover
It's perfect.
everything?
It's perfect. In your teachings, you offer guidances to awakening. Can you talk about it and how it works? And what's the point and the benefits of being awakened?
Right. Well, just like I mentioned, the foundational vehicle or classical Buddhism, Hinayana. In Pemako method, we talk about the so-called Bhumi openings or awakening experiences in plural. So, Bhumi is a Sanskrit word that literally means ground. And both in Mahayana and Vajrayana Buddhism, there is plenty of literature about the so-called Bhumis. So awakening experience or awakening it's a universal thing. It's not a particularly Buddhist thing, although Buddhism is or should be focused on that very matter. Should be, not isn't always, but so awakening is a universal thing, which means that as human beings we become identified and we get fixed with the notion of me, I, or mine. We become fixed with the notion of self. That word, like self with small s, S-E-L-F, self, and self-delusion, it is widely mentioned in Dharmic yogic literature. So we become fixed with this notion of me, I, mine, self, and this makes us contract. This makes us small. The strongest moment of that self-fixation, self-illusion, is when we become angry, for example, or jealous or greedy. Me, I want this. I, me. Everybody knows this, right? So when we talk about existential confusion or existential pain, dukkha, in Buddhism, it means this fixation to the thought of me-ness, I-ness. And in Pemako we have a little technique called the two-part formula to remove the grossest form of selfing, the grossest form of this I, me, mine. And we call this grossest form subject self. Subject self. So it is simply like a two-part formula. It's simply a little technique to remove that notion of I-ness, notion of me-ness, that what happens in life, in normal life with people, is that they have these self-based, I, me-based reactions, and when we have that, it makes that delusion stronger. When people believe into that self-thought, it becomes stronger, it becomes magnetized, you could say. So the two-part formula is to do the opposite. It's to kind of just like the Russian doll, a Russian doll where you have a big doll and smaller and smaller and smaller inside. It's kind of a way to deconstruct, to take down that grossest form of self. And it does it well. And two-part formula, that's not a tantric exercise. That's like a sutra style exercise. You don't need empowerments for it or anything like that. We have it on the website for free. We have a book based on that for free. And we have guidance also, guidance to awakening. I've done the dialogue with over 150 people since 2014. And at the moment, I'm not doing it actively, guidances anymore, because my students who are teachers and instructors, they are offering guidance. So it's just a process that uses the technique, two-part formula, and then there's the guide or a teacher, instructor who helps the person who is working on it to helps to use it without getting distracted or sidetracked. Somebody who's done it, him or herself. And it works really well.
Okay, and if I understand it well, it's the first Bhumi who is opened with this technique.
Yes, that is exactly right. So I mentioned that there are people who come to have awakening experiences through some kind of yogic meditative practices. Some people have awakening experiences perhaps in a stressful or dramatic experiences in life, maybe an accident, maybe a passing of a loved one or illness. I've met people of all those categories who've had awakening experience and didn't know that it's called awakening, or didn't know that it had anything to do with Buddhism or yoga or this thing. And then I've also met people. I met a couple of people who never had that sense of self, even that. So first Bhumi, it's first Bhumi, first ground, first awakening. It's kind of just like a technical term to put it into context. So when we speak about Bhumis in Pemako Buddhism, we are talking about stages of practice. Stages, simple as that. So in our path map, in our system of mapping different stages of awakening, stages of enlightenment, in our map there are 13 stages, 13 grounds. And these grounds are directly related to the subtle body, energy body, what is also known as the mind. Buddhism usually speaks of the mind, but as tantrics, we kind of look at the mind as an energy body made of energy. So we talk about energy centers, chakras, energy channels, nadis. And what happens in the energy body when we have awakening experiences, whether we are Buddhist, whether we are just normal people having hard patch in life, whether we are Eckhart Tolle, Ramana Maharishi, Dalai Lama, Padmasambhava, if we are talking about real awakening experience and not some meditative state of oneness or meditative state of incredible bliss, awakening is not those. So awakening is a permanent event, permanent shift in the mind that doesn't go back. It is like a permanent, you could say sort of like making a hole into the mind, like this. And it's kind of a hole in the energy body, and through that hole the light of the basic state shines through. And in this way it's like a permanent shift. So to say that first awakening relates to the first Bhumi, this is like a technical way of expressing it. Yes.
Okay, and in your system, I know that you analyze the attainments of your students, and how does it work? How is there a technique that you can teach to your students also for them to be able to analyze other people?
Yes, we do this. I mentioned that through Shiatsu and Reiki, and especially through Zen calligraphy with Terayama Sensei, I was introduced and trained in sensing energies. I was trained in developing energetic sensitivity. Energetic sensitivity means that we can sense we can kind of pick up on different energies so that we can sense them, we can feel them, and most importantly, that we can analyze them. So it's not like just sensing some stuff and just feeling it and not understanding, not having any discoveries or observations about it, and then it passes. We are here talking about when we discuss analyzing or detecting awakening experiences or insights in, as it is understood in Buddhist yoga. We are talking about a very specific way of looking at energies and or sensing them and looking them or analyzing them. It's very specific, and this takes time. It takes time to understand it, because energetic sensitivity, well, some people, like for example artists, maybe if you are a dancer or a painter or a poet, kind of artistically working mind, then it might be that people have a little advantage of learning how to analyze than people who haven't had that kind of artistic subtle thing. So, but nevertheless, anybody can learn that. Why? Because every human being has the same energy body. So that's really something. We all have, whether we know it or not, we have the same energy body, made of the same channels, made of the same energy centers inside the body and outside the body. We all have that. So when we talk about sensing and looking and analyzing of the energy body as it's understood in the 13 Bhumi model, for example, it requires some study, real training, but it's possible to learn because we all have it. It's not something that is some people have and some people don't. Everybody has it. And this means that reading energy bodies, it's a universal skill that anybody can learn. And this knowledge was actually part of Buddhist tradition at some point, based on the literature that is available. But I've discussed this with a couple of Buddhist scholars and a couple of Buddhist teachers who've been around and have been very close students of High Lamas for 40 or 50 years. And based on my own study as well as their comments, nobody uses the Bhumis in mainstream Buddhism at the moment. Nobody uses it. Nevertheless, there is scriptures like the Avatamsaka Sutra that extensively talks about Bhumis and many other texts, but nobody kind of understands what the texts are about. So it's a pity that from mainstream Buddhism this understanding, this knowledge, this information has disappeared at some point in history. But I learned this early on from Terayama Sensei in Shiatsu. I had a really wonderful Shiatsu teacher, Master John Lewis. Hello, John, if you're watching. Really wonderful mentor. And then I've also done like energy healing. But most importantly, at one point when I was already receiving teachings from non-physical masters, one of those masters, I had maybe like few awakening experiences. I had the first one about 10 years ago, and then after that I had a couple of more. And then I realized that, well, what are these further awakenings about? And I realized that this is the same awakened state that I'm kind of awakening more into, or realizing more about, or kind of making my awakened state, I wouldn't say bigger or smaller, but that kind of mind, that basic nature, kept coming kind of more obvious than it was before. So as I made that discovery, I was practicing Guru Yoga, and then one of the masters who I was working with at the time pointed out to me that, Kim, check this out. So you've had first, second, third, fourth awakenings. Look how they relate to the small chakra centers, energy centers here inside the head. Like he was actually pointing out to me that, see if you can detect if they are kind of open, or if there is some closeness, some tightness there. And I noticed that, these centers here, 1, 2, 3, 4, are open, but when I sensed the next small center inside the head, it was closed. And the sixth one on the top of the head was closed. And then, I already knew about this pillar of chakra centers above the head. And he simply pointed out that what happens with these initial and consecutive awakening experiences is that they relate to these subtle centers. And when you have an awakening experience, it opens up the next one. He simply pointed out this. And this is the so-called 13 Bhumi model, 13 ground awakening model that we use. And it's simply a way to, it's a path map, and a tool one can help along the way. What is unfortunately really common is that many people have these awakening experiences. Maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, 4, maybe even 5, but people don't know how they fit in the whole picture. What is their position in relation to so-called full enlightenment or Buddhahood? So to know where we are, just like if we are, in a city somewhere or traveling somewhere, we need a map, right? So in the same way, we need a map regarding spiritual awakenings, and then how they relate to the full enlightenment. So that's 13 Bhumi model is what we use for that purpose. It is simply a tool.
Okay. And during the preparation of this interview, I sent you my photo so that you can analyze it and tell me where I was according to this model. So because you use photographies to analyze, so can you tell me, according to this map, where am I on this path, and if I have reached any attainment, and what should I do to go further?
Yes, Ludovic, I'm happy to do that. I've been, I did so many, like literally over 150 guidances to awakening in a few short years. So I've been taking a break from that, but I also did literally like, I don't know, maybe 8,000 Bhumi analyses. A lot of them to test my skill, to test my understanding, to test the teaching that I was given. So I really tested it. So that's why I'm not doing Bhumi analysis at the moment, but I can do one for you. So I checked the photo you send. And by the way, the photo is just like a doorway or an entryway. So the reason why I use photos is because it is a very easy to take photos nowadays, easy to send it over in email, and then I have done Bhumi analysis for my students when I've had time for it. So, that's why I simply prefer photos, because, arranging a video call session, it's a bit more difficult to arrange. But you have 3 Bhumis open, meaning that the first center here on the level of the eyes inside the head is open. Then the second one, which is at the level of forehead, and then the third one at the center of the forehead. These 3 are open. Let me open your photo again. I can obviously see you in the video also, but I can see your face bigger here from the photo. Yes, so there is. I'm just looking at your picture, but I'm kind of sensing you as a person, sensing your energy from the photograph. So it is good to have a good quality photograph for this, but the photo, like I said, it's just a doorway or an entryway to your energy, to your mind, to your insight, to your realization. And 3 Bhumis open, 3 small centers between your eye level and center of the forehead. But then the 4th one, it's kind of like there's a subtle contraction there, point of contraction. But having said that, in general, your energy is not at all agitated, so it's quite calm, quite clear, a little bit sleepy, perhaps a little bit drowsy, and this drowsiness is because the deep subconscious mind. But 3. Wait a second, where is? I lost the zoom for a moment. But it's 3 open. It's a good position to be in.
Thank you. And from there, what do you recommend for someone who is at this level to practice?
Well, what I recommend is one thing. What you want to do is another thing. But as a teacher of Tantra, I always recommend being in contact with some Mahasiddha. If you feel close to Jesus Christ, please stay in tune with him every day. Establish the connection. If it is a prayer you're using, or a mantra you're calling him to you, or if you like to visualize his image and get connected with him through that, any of these tools will help you to do that. But Guru Yoga is always my recommendation, whether you want to do it with Jesus, Shakyamuni Buddha, Padmasambhava, Krishna, any of these great spiritual masters. That is always my number 1 recommendation. And this is, of course, the foundation of the whole tantric idea. And the reason for that is that even if we have many teachers and guides, instructors in the world who have had first awakening experience, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6, they are still not fully enlightened, right? So it is fortunate that we can study meditation or different types of yoga with somebody who's had maybe 1 or few awakening experiences. It is much better than studying with somebody who haven't had any, right? But there is still a huge difference between that level and then full enlightenment, when all the 10 Bhumis that store karmic, that store karma, that store our sense of I-ness, me-ness in gross, subtle and very subtle forms, it is completely different story practicing it with a spiritual master or a Mahasiddha. And this is the reason I always, or if any of the listeners, want my advice, this is my advice. So think about some master Mahasiddha who you feel love or closeness or interest, and start establishing a living connection with that master. And what it means to have a living connection, it means that it doesn't mean, for example, Jesus. In Pemako, even though it's branded Buddhism, to me it is completely obvious and clear that Jesus was a master of Dharma. Even if we look at the Bible that has been edited and re-edited again and again, there is a very clear message of compassion in there. And also he is said to have, resurrected, not leaving physical remains. This is Vajrayana, this is a tantric thing. This has happened in ancient Tibet, in ancient lands where the so-called Dzogchen has been practiced. This has happened widely in Hinduism, in India, in China, in Taoism, and also in Christianity after Jesus' time, among desert fathers. There is a wonderful book by Father Francis Tissot about Jesus, studying his example in the light of Tibetan Dzogchen. But the living connection or Guru Yoga means that it doesn't mean like repeating or doing something. For example, Namo Ishaya, Namo Ishaya, Namo Ishaya, which is a mantra that I use for Jesus. Namo Ishaya. So it doesn't mean keep repeating. It means that we use that Jesus as a visualized image or a mantra or some prayer. Oh, dear Jesus, please come to me. Please shower me with your blessings. Living connection means that we use a technique, some practice, and then we open up and receive the blessings. This is Guru Yoga. Guru Yoga is not repeating some practices. Guru Yoga is feeling the blessings, receiving the blessings, actually feeling the presence of the master in question. So this is my number one recommendation, because it is obvious that when we spend time with a specialist, that specialist gives us whatever the art or whatever the art is. And in this case, we are talking about the art of existence, the art of Dharma, art of yoga. So when we tune in to some master and we feel the transmission, feel the blessings, this makes our own basic nature, Mahasiddha nature, Buddha nature, become revealed. And this is what we all seek. 1 or 2 or 3 awakenings is not enough. We need to purify the whole system. Remove selfing, I-ness, me-ness in all forms, in gross form, in subtle form and very subtle form. And when we do that, assisted by a Mahasiddha, whether physically living or non-physical, doesn't really matter, either one, then we really come to know ourselves. then we really, what is that word? Graduate of all yoga methods. Then we truly know ourselves. So this is why I recommend doing Guru Yoga.
And this method or this way, this path of Guru Yoga, is it in your experience is it easier than sutra or the sutric path, or is it faster?
Oh gosh, you hit the nail on the head there, Ludovic. From my personal actually, I have a really concretic example of this. You know, back in the day when I was practicing Zen Buddhism, in the monastery we used to have week-long retreats, week-long sessions. And during those weeks, we used to sit in meditation, in Zazen, Zen meditation, for, oh gosh, up to 16, 17, 18 hours a day. It's sitting like a, you know, so much sitting that it's like frogs sitting or stones sitting. And it's very, very hard work. No matter who you are, it's very hard work. And I remember when I switched from Zen practice to tantric practice, and I did during the first initiation weekend that I joined, I received an initiation to tantric practice, and then the first day after the empowerment, we did the practice. The practice session lasted 20 or 30 minutes. After that 20 or 30 minutes, the generated clarity was the same as it was after a week-long Zen retreat. Very different. And also, you know, I mentioned the terms Tantrayana, tantric path, and Sutrayana, sutric path. Sutra means that there is no Guru Yoga, like you don't invite masters into your presence, even though you might be working with a Zen teacher or master who gives you instructions, but you don't energetically connect with any master like on regular basis. So Sutrayana means that you work with your own energy, you work with your own body, you do the practices that your teacher tells you to do, and you generate insights, awakenings on your own, basically. You rely on your own effort. But in Tantra, where Guru Yoga, where tuning in with a realized master is the foundation, you know, all you have to do is invite, dear Shakyamuni Buddha, dear Jesus, dear Guru Rinpoche, please shower me with your blessings. All you have to do is invite, and then you don't have to do anything except receive, and it's very enjoyable. So, to me, personally, based on my experiences, I can definitely say that for me, Tantra was much better, much faster, and much easier. But as maybe I should also just say that, you know, these methods are very different. Very different. The other one relies on one's own effort and energy and power. The other one relies on the transmission from the outside. And that's not where it ends. You know, this transmission is there just to help uncover and realize one's own Buddha nature and become Buddhas or Mahasiddhas like those masters. So to me, there is no question which one is easier and much more pleasant, and also much more time saving.
And can you explain what is transmission or empowerment, and is it a prerequisite? Is it needed to follow a tantric path? Is one has to go to a master and to ask him for an empowerment to start a tantric path?
Well, empowerments are definitely a very important in Tantra. In Hindu Tantra, Buddhist Tantra, also in Taoism, very important. But, well, maybe I'll just clarify what empowerment is. So, well, the word itself, empowerment, tells a lot. It is empowering to receive an empowerment. Having said that, I immediately understand that, there is a lot of dodgy things and bad things and harmful things in the world of religion in general, but also in the world of yoga and tantra, because there is all kinds of strange and bad things, and also like a distorted views. Some gurus, in citation marks gurus, they explain guru yoga in a way that it isn't, that is not correct. So it is not about worshipping somebody, it's not about giving away one's own power, giving away one's own energy, or not. You definitely shouldn't give your own energy or your own life into the hands of someone else. Devotion is definitely important when we approach, just like we should approach anybody really, from our neighbors to our grandmothers to, we should approach people sincerely and honestly. But that is also enough when it comes to Mahasiddhas. If your heart is pure, it is already half done, the whole project. So, I'm trying to make the point that we don't need to worship gurus. If it's a real guru in question, they don't need it. And if it is if it is a real guru, they won't accept it. They will point out that no, don't do that. That is not what Dharma is about. So empowerment is an event where a representative of some tantric lineage or a living master. In Pemako we have empowerments of deities, like deities, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas and Dharma protectors, meaning that like peaceful Buddhas, peaceful enlightened energies, and compassionate enlightened energies, and wrathful enlightened energies. So empowerment means that whether it's in Pemako, whether it's myself giving empowerment or other teachers giving empowerment, we are representatives of Padmasambhava's lineage and teachings. So it is Padmasambhava as the founding Mahasiddha who has fixed or set a certain combination of different deities. He passed it on to me, to pass it on to others, to pass it on to others. So that this transmission, this empowerment can keep, nourishing others spiritually. So it is simply, there are different views about what empowerment is in Buddhist Vajrayana. But my view is, like I said, it's a very kind of practical and pragmatic and down to earth. So all I expect from my students and those who come to me or Pemako teachers to receive an empowerment, all I expect is what I expect from everybody else. To be honest and sincere, to be open-hearted. So, I don't make people take any complex vows or make any commitment to me or commitment to practice. They can receive the empowerment, try the practice and see for themselves if they want to keep doing it or if they want to drop it. So, in short, empowerment is a very meaningful event where the teacher or master in question transmits the mind, heart of enlightenment to those who want to receive the empowerment, the students, in the form of tantric deities, of archetypes. But it is often asked about Guru Yoga that is it necessary to receive an empowerment for Guru Yoga? No, it is not necessary. It can be helpful, but it's not a requirement. Why? Because when somebody purifies the 10 Bhumis, the mind, when somebody realizes emptiness of all phenomena, emptiness of all phenomena is a Buddhist technical term, which in other words is like removing or self-delusion. At that point, that person becomes a realized master, a Mahasiddha, who is, to use a Christian term or a Western term, becomes omniscient, or omnipresent. Omnipresent. And this omnipresent, the meaning of that in Buddhism is different than in Christianity, in Christian way of interpreting it. And the meaning of that in Buddhism is that when we have I have Padmasambhava's big painting just next to me. So like somebody like him, he's not listening to everybody's thoughts, or he's not aware of what is happening in the life of all sentient beings at the same time. He's not like a omnipresent big God like that. Omnipresence in Buddhism means that it means like a being available to others, being available in a way, in a pure, clear-minded, sober, fresh way, being available for blessings. There was some point that I forgot to say, but it kind of just passed through my mind, so feel free to. Oh yes, I was talking about Guru Yoga that doesn't require empowerment. So no, necessarily it doesn't. You can just, they are available. Guru Rinpoche is available. Milarepa, Machik Labdron, Yeshe Tsogyal, all these great masters, Jesus Christ, they are available. All we need to do is to tune our radio and enjoy the broadcast.
Okay, and you talk about Buddhahood and Mahasiddhahood. And can you define what are the characteristics of this attainment? And is it possible to attain this in this lifetime?
Well, that again hits the nail on the head, Ludovic. I remember when I started Zen practice and I was reading these classical books, for example, by Zen master Hakuin. Hakuin is the greatest Japanese Zen master during the last 500 years. And then I was reading books by his ancient predecessors from China. And they all said that it's possible to realize this Buddha nature in full And then later on, I heard exactly the same message from few Hindu Mahasiddhas, like Shaiva tantrics. And then I heard the same thing from Buddhist tantrics. So many masters saying exactly the same point, that it is possible because we have Buddha nature, it is possible to realize it. It is that simple. But majority of people, mostly because the present world of Dharma, in small or bigger ways, are about dogmatism rather than pragmatism. Because of that, religious way of approaching yoga, it distorts things, and it also distorts what the masters keep telling us, one after the other. It is of course possible, but again, if we look at this, I was talking about that we have so many people in the world now who come to first and maybe second awakening experience. We have so many people like that nowadays. People practice mindfulness, and people practice goenka, and people do all kinds of psychological work, psychotherapeutic process, and many people come to their first couple of awakenings. But like I said before, it's not even close. It's a little taste, but it's not complete, not even close to it. So what the world needs, in my view, are ways, methods, practices that cover the whole thing. Not just the beginning, not only up to the intermediate state, but all the way through. We need practices that enable, on daily basis, that enable recognition of the basic state. Not only recognition when we go on a retreat once or twice a year, not only when we meet some tantric master or a lama, perhaps once every year or once every second year, not only on special occasions. We need practices that enable it today. Now, if I need to shed those self-based programs and habits and return to the basic state, we need practices that deliver it at an instance, in an instant, right now. So if people had such practices, and it is my deepest prayer that such practices come to people in any possible way, the world would be already very different. Buddhism has been around for 2000 years, and a lot of it is ritualized, just ceremonies, and also, Jesus started what became Christianity 2,000 years ago. No, Buddhism has been around for 2,500, and Christianity 2,000. I got my religions wrong, but so there has been a lot of time. For example, these religious traditions to make it happen for the whole world community, but it hasn't, because the samsaric, the confused mind of men, mostly people in general, have screwed it up. So unfortunately it hasn't happened, but I started this path understanding that people suffer, what I witnessed in my early childhood. So it is my deepest prayer. It might be completely impossible to achieve, but as a teacher of yoga and dharma, My wish is that the whole humanity, or a great part of humanity, or a much greater part of humanity, of practitioners than now, would have these awakening experiences. Not just one in life, not just 5 in life, but have daily recognitions so that they could really stabilize and become fully realized. Because it is our basic nature. This is not the, how do you say, not the possession, not the, it doesn't belong to just people of some nationality, like Tibetans, for example, or Chinese, or Japanese, or Indian. It is not the possession of some special people. We all have Buddha nature, and may practices that enable its recognition on daily basis, in daily practice, may they spread.
How does Buddhahood or ultimate realization, how does it manifest in everyday life? What are the characteristics?
Well, our basic nature is good. Our delusion is bad and harmful, distorts things, makes things twisted, creates conflicts, right? We all know this. You know, we all have the experience of that small contracted self and how it sabotages our life. It makes our life unhappy, and is it a word, unenjoyable, not enjoyable. So it ruins our life in so many ways, makes us feel inadequate, insufficient, makes us feel bad, makes us feel small, makes us feel that something is not right. And this comes to our relationships, comes between spouses, comes between parents and children, comes between family members. This negativity comes between friends, comes between workmates, comes to all relationships. Imagine if all that was gone. Imagine if you only felt good, that you didn't try to feel good. You just felt good. And bright and clear and sober in your mind, loving spontaneously, like you didn't have to generate love. That clarity and that kindness would just automatically be there. That's how it feels. That's how it feels to be natural.
And you, as the founder of Pemako Buddhism, do you consider yourself to have attained this realization?
Yes, I have finished my purification process. To me also, for exactly 42 years, life was a struggle. And for, if I don't count, although all the spontaneous sessions that I did in childhood and all the meditations I did in judo, and if I only count the years of my formal practice, I practiced for 18 years when I finished my purification process. But it took me so long because, as a founder of this method, I had to know what is going on in the established Buddhism. You know, I studied with my closest teachers who I was a disciple of, and they asked me to teach are Terayama Sensei and Sivakami. But then also I studied briefly with many other teachers alive. Hindu tantrics, Buddhist tantrics, Chokchen teachers, many. So personally, in my path, you know, I had to look around to get a sense of what is going on and what is wrong, what could be bettered, what could be updated to create a ideal, like I said, ideal learning environment in the practice of yoga and dharma. So it took me 18 years, but I finally made it. You know, little by little, having those daily recognitions of basic nature, glimpses in my daily practice, and going through the 13 Bhumi model, the map, purifying all these layers, purifying my energy body. But in Pemako Sangha, we also, at present, we have 4 others who have achieved the same. So it's not only me. It's and for them it took much less time than it did for me. So I'm really happy for them. But it is definitely possible. It is exactly like masters have said and repeated, that it is possible to completely realize, become fully enlightened. But I have to say that when I use the term full enlightenment or Buddhahood or Mahasiddhahood, these are very loaded terms. There's a lot of baggage with these terms, and they have been used so many times about people who weren't fully enlightened. But what it means is that it is very down-to-earth experience, because our basic nature is very down-to-earth. There is absolutely nothing mystical or strange or religious. I wouldn't even say that there is, you know, if I think of my day, when I wake up, when I do my daily activities, when I'm with my children, it is not, you know, having gone to the end of complete purification. I don't live in a spiritual experience. My mind is just sober, and when I am in situations that used to make me irritated, you know, before, that irritation just doesn't arise. When I sleep, my dreams are weightless, you know, like thoughts are weightless, so they don't have a magnetism or gripping power. They are completely weightless. And when I wake up in the morning, I'm completely fresh at an instant. I remember when and I'm sure everybody can relate to this, you know, when I used to wake up in the morning, it used to take like a while to come to the senses, so to speak, to wake up in the morning. But I don't have any of that anymore. So my mind is in its basic state all the time. All these senses of self that used to make me small don't happen anymore. And this is simply an outcome. It didn't drop into my lap all of a sudden. Like I said, you know, I did systematical practice that explains all this energy body and different layers or Bhumis in the energy body. So I used that path map of Bhumis to map where I was and what was still left and what was to be done next. But at some point, there was nothing more to purify. So I'm simply talking about a very practical and pragmatical process that has nothing to do with some mystical occurrences or magical events, nothing like this.
Okay. It's very clear. And now I have some technical questions. First, you talk about in your book, What's Next? You talk about dynamic concentration.
Yes.
Can you tell us what it is and how can it be a tool to progress along the path?
Yes. Dynamic concentration. So, in the vast majority of yogic meditative teachings, they use a gentle type of concentration. Anybody who's done a mindfulness session or Vipassana retreat or Zen retreat or any of these sutra type style teachings, they know that they apply this gentle type of focus, concentration, where you, for example, follow the touch of the breath here in the nose. So you gently, with gentle focus, you follow that sensation. Or you might be following the sensation of the breath in the belly, or you might be focusing on bodily sensations, just gently being aware of bodily sensations. So this is like a gentle type of concentration. And anybody who's done that kind of practice, you know that sooner or later you get distracted into fantasies, thoughts, this thought, that thought leads to another thought association. You have you get lost in memories or planning what you will do after the meditation session. I have to go to the grocery store and then I have to pick up kids from the daycare and then I was following my breath, so you come back to following it. So this is like a very typical meditative exercise, gentle concentration, used widely in so-called shamatha meditation, calm abiding, and also in jhana practice in Theravada Buddhism. Gentle concentration. Dynamic concentration is not gentle. So with gentle, I use this analogy in my book, freely available from the website. If you think of the good old stereo system, where you have the volume knob, gentle concentration is like having the volume of the music on, let's say, 5% or 10%. So you have like a low volume of music. Dynamic concentration is twisting the volume knob to the other end, but you can't keep it on the full all the time. There would not be point in very intense concentration. So what we do, what dynamic concentration means is that, well, the principle is that you switch the volume to very high, let's say 60, 70, 80, 90% of the full, and then you keep repeating it with rhythm, like this. So it's the same concentration, same principle of concentration, but the application of that is completely different. Instead of keeping it on low volume and getting distracted, going back to the low volume, getting distracted, going back, the way how we do it and the way how it's done in Shintoism in Japan I trained in a Shinto dojo in Tokyo. It's done a little bit in Dzogchen of Tibet. So it's not like it's done in systems. But the way how we do it in Pemako is that we don't shout just 1, 2, or 3 times. These are shouts. So when I mean putting the volume high and doing it rhythmically, we use voice, shouts, explosive voice to produce that. Controlled, focused, but explosive. So the way how we do it is that we do many of those shouts, repeated shouts. And in, for example, in Rainbow Body Yoga, which is the most basic tantric practice we have, in Pemako method, it has maybe like at least 50 shouts per practice session. That's the most basic, but just yesterday a Sangha member in our Facebook Sangha, Ben was saying how he, in his daily practice of Rainbow Body Yoga, he shouts between 100 to 300 repetitions. And the reason why we do this, if I use the analogy of smoke arising from a bonfire. So imagine that we have a bonfire and there is smoke arising from it. And applying this smoke is our samsaric mind, our self-based mind, our self-habits that is centered around the notion of I or me. So if we use gentle concentration, having our aura full of smoke, it would be like using a small fan to get rid of the smoke a little bit to be able to breathe. Small fan. But the dynamic concentration is like having a square meter big fan and doing this. So it fans, it removes the smoke much more efficiently. And this is the I would say a deciding point why in our Sangha, we have a group of 85 people. So this is the reason why what enables people to have these awakening experiences very easily. Because when we use that big fan, it removes the smoke altogether. And it keeps doing that. So when we punch through the aura made of self-delusional concepts and habits, for a moment, we keep punching through it. We keep making a clear pathway to our basic state. And this makes our basic state to be uncovered and revealed and experienced, automatically recognized. So that's why we do that.
Okay, I saw that you have some meditations with dynamic concentration in your YouTube channel. So I will put the links in the description, so the listeners can go and practice this dynamic concentration. You talked about rainbow body yoga. What is it? And is it? You said that it was a basic teaching or basic practice. Can you describe it?
Rainbow Body Yoga is in its most basic form, it is a practice set that takes maybe 30 or 40 minutes daily to practice. And it has, tantric practice consists of couple of basic elements. So first you have the empowerment which aligns your energy body. We talked about empowerment before, so it makes it possible to use certain enlightened archetypes or deities, and with the help of mantras to sounds, sounds, vocalized sounds, to re-establish those deities, that enlightened state in one's energy body. So mantras are part of Tantra. Visualizations are part of Tantra. We do very simple visualizations in Pemako. Nothing complex like having a guru or deity in the middle and then having a bunch of other deities around, and then no need to visualize everything in detail. We don't do those difficult ones on purpose, actually, because the practice needs to be something that modern people and lay people who don't have much time for practice can do. So we can't spend a lot of time in trying to perfect visualization. So that's the reason why we do very simple ones, and also very short and simple mantras. So Tantra is made of mantras, visualizations, mudras, which are hand gestures or bodily positions, and then breathing practices. And these four are often together, practiced together. So these are the basic elements of tantric practice. And in Rainbow Body Yoga we have all those: mantra, visualization, mudra, breathing practices. But then we also have shouting, dynamic concentration, and we also have dynamic concentration in physical form, physical application of explosive focus, where you tense the muscles. This is called isometric muscle exercise, isometric exercise in Western gymnastics. So we do dynamic concentration, and maybe a word about visualizations. We've talked about Bhumis and the energy body. So we use visualizations that directly address the aura and specifically address the next Bhumi that we're working on, meaning a certain area in the energy body within the physical body, or in the energy body of the aura that we might be working with. So we simply use the energy body in a very exact manner. So Rainbow Body Yoga is like a how should I say, like a condensed, concise bundle of practices in one, like a formula. Yeah.
It's a package.
Package.
Okay. So if someone who listens to this conversation wants to be a part of your sangha or follow your teachings, how you can go to your website and you can just contact you, or is there links to some empowerments or something like that?
We have Lama Carl from Norway. He's the one who is giving Rainbow Body Yoga empowerments nowadays in English. So we have a Facebook page, PemakoBuddhism.com. We also have a website, but the website, it has a lot of information, but it's kind of not updated at the moment because we are getting a new website. But we have a website, PemakoBuddhism.com, and we also have a Facebook group. So if somebody wants to learn and try Rainbow Body Yoga, the Facebook group is the best way to know about the coming events. Carl is giving empowerments every month. There's also Ugi, who is one of our instructors from Switzerland. Ugi is giving empowerments in German. So that's also possible. And Trevor from United States, he's also starting to give Rainbow Body Yoga empowerments. But I think that the Facebook group is best to stay up to date of events. But for general information about Pemako, we have a YouTube channel, PemakoBuddhism.com. And I also have had a blog for years, Open Heart blog. It's openheart.blogspot.com. So I have lots of materials there. And I've also written 2 books that are freely available from the website.
Okay, I will put all the links in the description so people will know where to go. And we covered a lot of ground. And I want to thank you again because you are very transparent in your way of saying things. So thank you for that. And I learned a lot today, so it's perfect. And I hope that the listeners will learn also. And I will try to practice dynamic concentration because I'm a little bit shy with this practice because it's shouting. So so it's difficult to put it in place. But thank you again, and I wish you the best for what's next.
Thank you very much, Ludovic, for those words. Thank you for the invitation to do this. This is the first invitation I've ever had to podcast, so my pleasure that it was with you in yours. And what you said about dynamic concentration and being shy about it, I've heard it a lot. But well, maybe you can try it when others are not home, or maybe you can go to a forest where people don't hear you or are not bothered, or in a park. Just find a way to try it, because it really works and delivers.
Okay, I will try. And I will put the video online maybe in 3 or 4 weeks because I have to do the translation and subtitles, so it can take a little bit of time. But thank you again, and see you later, maybe.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
And thanks to listeners as well. All the best.